So I could ask you, primarily, what do you feel like your poetry is about? Is it a variety of things, or you kind of try to focus on a specific, topic?
At this moment, because as I say, when you first start out, you're just basically writing on your raw emotions and how you're feeling about certain things. Because when I started writing, I was going through a lot of anxiety. I didn't know what anxiety attacks were until I experienced one, and then I experienced the second one, and then I started writing about how it felt. And then I started writing about other people's experiences as well over time. And I didn't think that we as writers could have that ability to listen to somebody's story, for example, about gender-based violence, and be able to interpret it in your own way, which made me realize that as a writer we are very versatile. So we don't just have to write about love or history or life in general or depression. You could write about so many different aspects of life on a whole. But for the past, I could say for the past 6 months now, I've been mainly focusing on history because I'm working on my first book, my first poetry book. So I've been focusing on African history, African ancestry, and getting, I think now that I'm more comfortable with being a mixed race woman in South Africa. And the fact that I'm a different type of mixed race woman in South Africa because of the narrative of what a mixed race person is supposed to be like within South Africa. So I put those in the book, as well as I said, history as well has played a big part in it. Not just history as Africans dating back to the Bantu people, but also history of being mixed race and where did the first mixed race people come about, their stories, what happened, back in Germany, back in Asia during World War I, and so on and so forth. So I think I've become more of a versatile writer now as to when I first started.
Okay, okay, that's real cool. I was gonna ask you, sort of for the viewers who may not know, what is anxiety? What is an anxiety attack?
My interpretation of an anxiety attack, um, when I wrote a piece basically about it to explain what it was, is because, as I say, Kimberly Anderson is the type of person that didn't like confrontation, and didn't like people yelling at them, and didn't know basically how to deal with those certain things. And the first time I actually had one, someone was yelling at me, and I'm trying to be calm and chilled, and this dude is yelling at me, and I'm still trying to be chilled, and then my body just I just started hyperventilating, and I couldn't breathe, and then like I just went blank for a good couple of minutes, and it was crazy because when I had to learn on my own and also do research to figure out what anxiety was and how I know my body so well now to a point that I know what triggers it. Also, I know when it's gonna happen because I could feel like my heart rate now is starting to go up, and I know, okay, my hands are starting to get sweaty, and then suddenly like I feel like the room, all the air in the room is getting getting sucked out of it. But when I started to learn more about it, it was actually, it's more of an emotional thing, and a mental thing, which is why I strongly believe now in like self-evaluation and mental and emotional health. Because when you're not healthy up here and when you don't have peace in here or here, then it comes out in those different forms and those different ways, especially if you like me, that I'd never spoke about a lot of things. When you keep a lot of stuff inside, it's gonna have to come out in some way.
Definitely, definitely. Um, okay, I want to ask you another question. You talked about being mixed race, and I can ask you about the term colored. I've heard that term. Is that an inappropriate or offensive term? And
I've
you can,
heard this.
speak on it a little bit more.
I've heard this so often though in the past few weeks, um, when talking about it, as well as doing my signature piece, which is entitled "A Colored Girl's Tale." I've heard, especially out in the States, that it's normally seen as a derogatory term. Also, when you look at history, it's seen as a derogatory term, whereas in my identification documents, when I fill out paperwork, On the mixed race section of every form, there's black, white, Indian, colored, Asian, other, right? Um, so it's not a derogatory term as per South African regulations, or what South Africa stands for in that term of ethnicity. But for me, I fall under, like, I don't choose to take on that name, but I know that's the name that I was given. I love rather being called mixed race. You rather call me mixed race, call me mixed breed, call me mixed anything. Just don't put me in one box to say colored, because even that term on a whole, when you look at the history of South Africa, it took them, I think, 4 or 5 different names we were called by for them to get to a point where they were like, oh, okay, now we're going to settle for colored. But when it came to ethnicity, with white, with Indian, with Asian, with black, it stayed that way. But with colored, it always changed because they didn't know which box to kind of put us in. And the thing is why I think I've embraced it more, being mixed races, because there's always this there's always this debate that comes about within colored people and within outside as well. Firstly, it's this the stereotypes of colored people are associated with violence, ruthlessness, lawlessness, teenage pregnancy, and the list is endless. Basically the way we or hear or perceive, we hear that a black man is and women are perceived as, in America, is the same way colored people are perceived as in South Africa. So it's very funny because you find in South Africa that black people are scared of colored people because media has sold them and told them that colored people are dangerous. We're gonna pull a knife on you, and we drink, and we all speak Afrikaans, which is something I also talk about a lot in my pieces, because I'm one of those colored people that doesn't speak Afrikaans, and for me, I got a big culture shock when I moved out to Johannesburg, because it was the first time now. I mean, in KZN, you don't really hear Afrikaans. I'm sure you heard when you were when you were there. It's mainly English and Zulu, and so that's what I grew up on. But when I moved to Johannesburg, I had people come up to me and start speaking Afrikaans. Now, I only know Afrikaans as per what I learned in school. So I would respond in English and they would respond in Afrikaans, and they'd carry on until I couldn't understand what they were saying. And the one guy looked at me and he's like, "What are you?" So I said to him that I'm colored. So he says, "Oh, but where are you from? Because you don't sound like you're from here." So I'm like, "What does a colored person from Johannesburg supposed to sound like?" He says, "No, you don't speak Afrikaans." Oh, so all colored people are supposed to know Afrikaans. So I had to explain it to him in very like 5 minutes that now I come from KwaZulu Natal, I come from the small town called Eshowe, and yeah, I grew up on isiZulu and English. That's all I needed to know to survive at that point.
Hmm. Okay, okay. Wow. Thank you for that breakdown. Now, a lot of our viewers are from America, so I'll try to, I guess translate some of it. So in South Africa, if a black man and a white woman, if they have a child, they'll be referred to as colored. But in
Yep.
America, they will be referred to as black. So Barack Obama, he would be considered colored or mixed in South Africa,
Mhm.
but in America, he's the first black president, for the viewers who may not understand. But black people in America, like you say, we was called a lot of different names. So
Yeah.
colored was one of the names that we was called as well. So if you came to America and you said you was colored, that would mean black. But you could go let them know what it means in your home country or whatever like that.
Yeah.
So